if we were to use this platform for a device, how could it be verified that the customer's Wi-Fi password and other data are safe? And is it all trust, or can something else be done in the form of testing?
Yeah, it's a great and it's a complex question. So first of all, just generically, before we get into the Chinese government, there are pros and cons to using a platform for your IoT device. In general, they're mostly pros. So the idea being that if somebody can create an IoT platform, and there's many, many of them out on the market, they can, presumably they will have done the security engineering better because they can amortize that cost over a wider range of products than you're going to do on your own if you're trying to build. Nobody's building an IoT system from first principles. Everybody's relying on systems these days. So now the question is, specifically with regard to a system from China or from perhaps another place in the world, what can we do? Well, first of all, it all gets back to what your business model is. And certain products are much more vulnerable than others. I mean, no, I wouldn't use a Chinese IoT platform to design an industrial control system for a nuclear power plant. That wouldn't strike me as a great idea. To control consumer light bulbs, I mean, there's still concerns to be sure, but the risk is lower, right? And then in terms of how do we mitigate against, the types of threats that you're mentioning, well, I think basically what that comes down to is you need to have somebody who's not part of that platform company, who is deep enough technically on the security side to be able to at least audit the system, understand if I'm building, let's say I'm building a mobile app around some sort of library that's given to me by the platform vendor. Well, let's go look at, to start with, what information is available to that platform, right? Can I see the source code that's actually running, or is the vendor, am I as the vendor relying only on binaries? Can I do audits of the back end? And so, there are still quite a number of things that can and should be done, even if I'm saying, well, I've got the best price from a vendor in a country whose government I don't totally trust. So I'd like to use that system, but I probably still need to do some diligence on it.
Great, thanks, Howdy. And Josh, your thoughts on the security concerns for some of the lower-end IoT devices coming from China or perhaps some other countries?
Yeah, first I just want to, on the topic of the RF link, though, what I wanted to say was, so yes, like the wired cable is typically considered more secure, but there is this cable called the OMG cable, and it is an embedded web server in a USB cable. I mean, so I just like to push back on the fact that because you have a wired cable doesn't mean that someone made it into a wireless one, because you can do hardware implants and things on normal looking cables. But yeah, on the, so I agree with Howdy on the consideration of what platform to use. I mean, so if your bottom line is, I want the cheapest like platform out there, quickest time to market, et cetera, if these are the priorities, then that may, I mean, there's other trade-offs to be made there. I mean, I use an RGB light that's from a Chinese manufacturer. Do I put it on a different network and monitor it? I sure do, but like I don't. It's I mean, yeah, you can have the trade-offs, and I think like if you were trying to build something that was critical infrastructure, you may want to consider some other alternatives, I would say, but like. Yeah, just because it comes from another country, I wouldn't necessarily label it as bad.
Great. And Trent, your thoughts on IoT, the lower level IoT security?
I'm a security guy. I don't trust anybody. And so whether it comes from China or whether it comes from Kansas or Texas, not to pick on any particular states, I agree with Howdy that, what we need is some way to do due diligence. Ideally, review source code. If we can't do that, then we need to look at testing the software, or if it's a hardware device, try to determine its behavior under a variety of conditions. Everything's a risk decision. There's no zero risk position in this particular space, right? We could get code from somebody across the street that actually doesn't behave as we would like it to or as we would expect. But we have to do our due diligence to get comfortable with the risk that it presents.